welcome in GoDigiBios Talk podcast. It's our second series, and today we're going to talk about quite interesting topic: how make fun from serious things. One of the biggest problem of the citizen engagement and decision support systems is how the complex the tools are. The whole complexity of academic works, statistics, which turns into certain decisions which citizens have to make and support. This creates a big barrier for engaging more and more community-led decision making in the local and national and European levels. And today we have quite a special guest in our studio in Brussels, Rafael Lontra, who is a game developer. Welcome, Rafael.
Welcome. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and participate in this consortium. I will try not to spoil too much in my presentation, so just a heads up, I'm Brazilian. I've worked with game development and gamification for over 12 years now, and I came to do a master's here in Belgium, loved it. Now I moved here and opened a company, and this is actually one of my first international projects with European Union, so it's a pleasure to be here with such qualified people. This is actually amazing to see how the work groups work, and met so many companies. So I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me. It will be a pleasure to participate in the podcast.
And thanks a lot for being with us. It's also quite good to have people from the various sectors, especially the ones who are developing games and quite different games in the for entertainment, but not only, also for studying and for decision support. We will be talking about this later. Yeah, it's great to have you in our project. Thanks a lot for being part of of transforming European biodiversity in peri-urban areas and being part of something bigger. So you made a small, you mentioned that you have game company, MIF and MITO Games. It's two companies we have in our consortium who focus on the development of the games. Can you maybe make a short introduction? What do they do? What do the games you make, and how does it work?
Yeah, sure. I imagine it's a bit different, but it's not that complicated, to be honest. I have a company in Brazil. It's called MITO Games. We started precisely with educational games. I think it's mostly because first I was a teacher of music. I graduated in music, became a music teacher, and I had my ambitions to fulfill as a teacher. But it was quite hard in the Brazilian, especially the public education system. We didn't have a lot of materials and time and other things for the students. So it was a bit saddening and depressing. But I had the opportunity to start working with educational games, and we started with a game for ENEM. ENEM is the test that all student does after he finishes the medium grade before entering university in Brazil. So we had in 5 years over 1 million unique users having it. It was a huge school for us, but it was not exactly the only thing we wanted to develop. We always had the vision to work with entertainment games in the future, but developing games is quite hard. So we needed to train the team, also have investments and funding to try to develop and enter the entertainment marketing. So we did a lot of educational games as products, educational projects for clients. Advert games were games for publicity and every sort of training and communication. And from there, we did applications, websites, everything we could to develop the company. And after 8 years of MITO Games, I was approved in a master's here in Belgium for game design, which is something that we don't have in Brazil. So I decided to move to do the master's. And while moving, I opened a company here. It's called MIF2. It's kind of a subsidiary of MITO Games in Brazil. The difference is that in Brazil we have a team. Here it's just me. So I focus the gamification knowledge and center here, and also look for projects and stuff. But I'm quite happy with the setup now. And after those 8 to 10 years, I will not make it long, but we did enter the entertainment marketing. So MITO Games in Brazil now, besides working with educational and other games, we are also on PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo Switch, and PC games as well. So we're bringing the quality and things we learn from this entertainment industry back to our origins with serious games.
All right. That's very interesting. Thank you so much. And you, as we can understand that games are not only about entertainment, really. They can be quite different. So, what are the other functions that they carry on? What the games are?
Well, the very definition of games can be difficult to grasp. We had a previous chat about it. I will make it simple now, but playing is a complex endeavor per se. Uh, so every game is in itself a simulation with a set of rules and an objective that the person has to willingly follow to participate in the game. This by itself is already a simulation, is already something that has some content. If you play, I don't know, Need for Speed, it's a racing game. At the very least, you will be developing a bit of your reflexes, your coordination, your eye to object coordination. Also, it's the same, but lots of things will be developing under you. So, but the game is not designed to teach you that. You kind of have to learn those things in able to be able to progress through the game. So the first level will be an easy race, and then you get all the turbo, nitro, whatever you can have, and then you're gonna win. At the end, he will bring you back to a more humble car and have a more difficult race, and then you develop your skills and you upgrade your car, and that this is the experience that makes you keep want to play. We want to take some of that concept, but in the content work with serious content. So in our case, for biodiversity, it's a very, very complex subject. It has so many intercalations, and one thing affects the other, and it's very hard. We do have a lot of research, and even for GoDigiBios, we have a huge scientific background work being done. Not background, it's part of the deliverables even, to do a research and scientific. But this is not accessible to the population, and even sometimes for some decision makers who are in the position to make those decisions, but they are not experts in science or biodiversity, biology, whatever. Then translating those concepts using the language of games can have a pretty interesting result, because we discussed every game is already a simulation with a set of rules and objectives. If we put this to entertainment, it's a product. If we put this to education, it's a tool. So we are working with a tool to make it easier for decision makers to understand what's going on and how to influence. I think this speaks a lot about the power of games, and I don't know if I can elaborate more on that, but I think this answers the question, right?
Yeah.
Sorry if I did drifted too much.
That's completely correct. That was exactly the question. So thanks for sharing. So, but when we talk about the biodiversity, about the saving biodiversity, we usually think of field research and legislation. And why do you think GoDigiBio is investing resources into gamification as well? Is it just about making things look nice, or is there more broad functional purpose?
Well, I can't argue that it does look a lot nicer in the game than those 300 pages reports we were talking about, and it makes more accessible. But it's definitely not about just making it pretty. I would say if you want to, we want to simplify a bit, it would be make it more accessible, and then making it look pretty in contrast to a huge scientific paper. Yes, it will look cooler, but more importantly, it will be more reachable. More people will be able to absorb something from it. It will save time from people. As we discussed, new technologies can sometimes sum the information for us. The game will make you experience the situations. And there's an interesting philosophical part of the game also. When you read a book or watch a movie, you're kind of passive. So your rate of absorption of that content is lower than when you participate. So when you're in a game, naturally, your capacity to retain that information is bigger because you're kind of a co-creator. You're associating your act of choosing something to an outcome. And then this will imprint a much nicer view in your head, in your brain. This is a bit, it's not even philosophy. I think it's already from the biology and how we work. But yeah, and this is the main importance of bringing gamification like that. Yes, it's a side effect. It looks cooler. Then it's easier for younger people to be interested. Also, making it digital and putting in a different platform. First, we're not talking about putting the GoDigiBios game on PlayStation, Xbox, and Switch. It's going to be web. But even the way we pack it and make it more accessible, it's not in the scientific files that you have to use Google Education to search. But no. It's a game. it's a kind of web application that you will experience, and it's open for everybody from any age. All you gotta do is know how to read and check the images, and you can play. Of course, it's not target for this kind of audience, but in reality, it's what it's gonna be.
Exactly, and let's make it maybe clear for our listeners who gonna play those games.
Yeah, it's very specific. So we're talking about some T labs here, and I think at the end we will put it on the GoDigiBios website so anyone could play, but it's not made for anyone. So it's target for the decision makers, the policy decision makers that act directly with biodiversity. And sometimes, as I mentioned, it's not their specialty because they are there to do a lot of different things too, and we cannot charge, oh, you should know better what happens when you build an airport or when you drain a river, whatever. No, it's not in the reality. It's those things take a long time. So for one person to have the experience of the outcomes of these decisions, it's quite hard. And then the idea is that the game will help them understand what can happen based after the decisions they make. So it's interesting for the general audience. Of course, anybody can learn a bit, will be able to learn a bit out of it, but it's really design thinking of those people. So
Of causes and consequences of your
yes,
own actions. Yeah.
in a very complex system that's hard to associate what's happening. So that's why it's so important to have the scientific background research at the beginning that I could never do by myself. My companies would never have the knowledge to do that. We have a consortium of 15 different companies to be able to go through all that. I'm just one piece of the puzzle.
All right, that's quite interesting. Let's then walk through the user experience of those games. If I'm local politician or a citizen logging into the tool, what do I see and what can I do there?
Okay, we do have a nice idea of how we want to have the game looking at the end, but it's still not finally approved by all the stakeholders from the project. So I will not go into too many details, but one thing that won't change is you will be playing the decision maker of one of those T labs. Things will happen and you have to make choices. On depending on your choices, other things will happen. Some stuff will be kind of random, and like in real life we cannot predict everything, and then you have to adapt. Maybe you have a plan for the beginning, okay, I'm gonna be like this, and then other things happen and you have to be flexible. So this is the main gist, but I really don't want to spoil the whole thing. Maybe we can have another podcast to talk about it when it's more defined.
That's an excellent idea. With pleasure, we'll make another podcast about that, even more if it needed.
Yeah.
It's always a pleasure to talk about that. Um, let's maybe dive a bit about the methods you will use to make it appealing for players to play. Are there maybe any interactions between the player or a multiplayer regime? What about those design decisions?
Yeah, I think without spoilers, I can also tackle a bit of that. Mm, it's not going to be multiplayer in the sense that people will be connected to the same game and see what other people are doing. But since it's designed for some dynamics with the T Labs, there's actually a group from each region that will be playing together and sharing the experiences and the results. And this is also part of the design to have them know why they're playing, know what they will do after. Uh, but not directly in the game. The game will be a single player experience where you start a journey in one point, you go through the narrative and the things that happen, and then at the end, you have the outcomes. We can talk a little bit more about that maybe ahead, how it will work, the conditions for winning and stuff like that. But basically, it's that. I don't know if the audience will know, but something like a SimCity would be a good reference. SimCity is a bit old. We have SimCity 2000 now. It's way more modern, but the older SimCities. But it's important to know the playing method per se, like the person playing will not have all the freedom to start a city from scratch like it does in SimCity. The idea is that we have already an ambient set up, and from that you have to keep it rolling per se. I will not go further than that, not to give spoilers, but this is the idea of it.
Great, but the main target, the main objective is also to remove complexity of the whole data and information which goes through the decision makers and probably citizens who may support those decisions. So it's one of the objectives is indeed remove this embracing complexity in sustainability in general and biodiversity boosting, accelerating decision supports system. And in a normal game, let's imagine as a Need for Speed, you mentioned
Yeah.
any other shooters games, you usually play to win. So in our GoDigiBios games tools you're designing, developing, what does winning may look like, and what are the scores users are trying to improve, or what can be some
Mm-hmm.
results of those games?
You want some spoilers. I can see that you want to be to beat the game before everybody else, but I can give some information on that because there's no winning in a scenario that we will keep living on and things will keep changing and evolving. So in that sense, we do have winning conditions for the narrative to end because the game has to end at some point. So yes, the player can win, and but then each T lab will have its own set of rules for winning. So it's a condition that you must meet to be able to finish that stage. So we can say, for example, in rules, we have the problems with the river and the deforestation around it, and we decided that okay, so I will give some deeper information on the project, what we plan right now. So it can change a bit, but in the main concept is that there will be 4 attributes that your region has to take care of. So it's governance, it's how much the people trust the government, how much the policies are in fact implemented. So it has to do with the politics. There's the environment attribute, which is how is biodiversity, how the things are working out in nature in relation to the development of the city. So is that pollution, the water is cool, the air, and then everything on. Then there's the participation of the society, the engagement of everybody, not just society, but then politicians, public organs, and people also, the community. And of course, there's the economic factor. For each region all over the world, just this is besides our 4T labs, but everywhere has different numbers for those. And also, the population of those regions have different aspirations. They see what's more important or more urgent different. And of course, it will depend on each region. So the winning conditions will be, for example, for rules, we want to have the environment attribute at least 8 because it was too degraded and we had so many problems. But we also want the population to trust in the system and the government. So those 2 attributes must be 8. And we cannot go broke. So economy cannot be under 5. And
Right.
this is a winning condition for the first stage of one of the T labs per se.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that's definitely does. It's quite good
I see you
idea.
writing the strategies already to win the game. Yeah.
All right. And maybe you can also make some examples. MITO Games has experience with some educational games like Mundo de Agosta for
Mm,
COVID-19. How does that experience also maybe translated in European biodiversity tool for European policymakers or local policymakers? So maybe you can also share some experience you have about the educational games and
mm-hmm.
how it may
Yeah.
influence.
I think the first thing we learned as a company and personally also myself is we don't know the content of everything that we can work to gamify. So, for example, for COVID-19, we had this game. It's called O Mundo de Augusto. The target audience was totally different than what we have now, but the process was quite similar. Instead of having a consortium with all the scientific information, imagine it was 2019, so everybody was worried about COVID. To publish one application on Google Play or App Store with the name COVID, you have to have a letter of the Secretary of Health from the country stating that what you're putting there as information is correct. So you're not doing false advertising, not doing fake news about COVID in your applications because everybody was looking for COVID in the apps to download things about it. So you got a lot of visibility and they made you responsible for that. So you cannot put, even one of the projects was a AR shooter game. So we would see the coronavirus flying around and use the AR to shoot them. It wasn't accepted on Apple Store. It said, no. There's no learning, no information. It's just a joke here. So no, I will not allow you to publish that. But the game, O Mundo de Augusto, was something to teach you about good habits, washing the hands, using the mask, keeping social distancing. So it was using everyday scenarios for kids playing and old. You love that Atari mechanics. All the gameplays are from Atari or from some old school video games because we wanted the kids to learn those mechanics. So there's Pac-Man, there's shooter, there's cleaning and choosing orders. A few things that we played on Atari and the first video games, we we just put the mechanics there. Very old Nintendo Wii Party games and stuff like that. We took a lot of inspiration from that, but to teach those concepts. The knowledge about COVID, the knowledge about the good practices was never in our choice, was never in our head, our knowledge basis. So we had to do a full research on how to do what content can be done. Then we made a partnership with the Secretary of Health. Luckily, my wife worked there, so it was easy to have access and also to get that letter if without her I couldn't get. Then this process of building in, we say at 4 hands, here it's 16 times 4, so 96, 128 hands, 196, I don't know. So this is the main knowledge we bring from that, I think. It's that first, we need to be very close to the audience using. So the whole consortium has a lot of contact with those real stakeholders and they already have them aboard and then we can consult with them how to make it. It was the same. We're making for kids, not for us to have fun. So we need to target the real audience. And to maybe should be point zero is the content must be created by experts. If you want to make a real serious educational game, unless, okay, I'm going to make a game about teaching music for children. I can know the content. I did the graduation. I have training to do that, so I can put that into a game. But just because I know how to use gamification and know how to develop a game, it doesn't mean that I know the content to make that game for a specific objective, learning objective. Then I think it relates a lot. And we had some, looking back now, we did have some fun and federal level experiences already before coming to European Union for an European Union project. So yeah, we built the bridge to arrive here. I didn't even remember how big it was with the COVID game. It was like, yeah, we had to go through a lot of certifications. But then I would say it's mostly the process and also the experience from 10 years developing different mechanics and applying that for educational games. We could see a bit more what works, what doesn't for each type of audience. And usually sometimes we would have like fancy ideas of a specific mechanic that would be really fun to play. But if it's not adding up to the goal of passing the content forward, it's better to cut it off. So it's better to simplify things that would make it a little bit funnier sometimes to push it a little bit to the educational side and make sure that this main objective is fulfilled. And then after that, we can put animations and cut scenes and like new mechanic. And after you do this, there's a mini game and whatever that can be fun. But many times it's not worth it, especially when we're thinking about the audience that will play our game now. So it's politics, decision makers that they don't have a lot of time to be able to play it. I prefer that every time they play, they have a new thing to learn. Then they repeat something that they found fun to play. They can do that on the free time, there's PlayStation there and stuff.
Yes, exactly. And actually, coming back to that point, I know that we had a discussion about this before, but it's going to be maybe a very interesting and relevant point for the podcast as well. So, people play games for fun most of the time. We can play for winning or losing. We can experiment. We can have not very serious relation to everything we do in the games because we're just simulating. That's why it's fun. We can experiment. We can go beyond, and we don't really afraid to have a very precise bad results from out of this experiment. So, do you think that policymakers or the end users of those game tools you're developing, they will take it seriously, and despite the gamified design, the gamified approach, the results will be very reliable for the implementation and the real political tools?
Yeah, first things first. We don't expect to have a direct outcome from the game to a policy, right? It's more to gather information and have more sensible data and more even not just direct answers. We want to understand how they will think and follow. Uh, it relates a lot with what I just said about the fun and scoring, because I think most of the times people will play some different character, especially on online games, right? One of the things you mentioned about what they play for, sometimes it will be just to be in group, and they want to be in group killing people. It's something that they would never do in real life, you know? So, yes. But that's why the serious game and educational games have a different niche. When you play an entertainment game, kind of you're turning off from society, from the real world, and you enter that special world. And this is like, even for competitive games, it's like chess. We give the example of that. In chess, when you start playing, one guy can be a peon, a person, peon, and the other person playing can be a king. But in the game, they will all have exactly equal army, exactly equal rules, and they have to behave.
Right.
So this even allows them to behave different than the person will just do in the real world. We are now in the world of chess. I can haggle you. I can tease you. I can make fun and play with you. It's something that will be unpolite, and it's allowed. And play football, you can make the cachimba, we say in Portuguese, and like just to make the other player mad. So the setup in this case is very important. The setup with the T labs, the discussions with those policymakers. So I think the information we get, although we will not use directly to create policies, but those information will be more reliable than the information we get from general audience on the website. That they will, okay, I just want to make environment go 10. I just want to make economy go 10 and fuck the rest. I just want to see what happens if I break all the ecology and those attributes. What happens? So people will be curious. When we are in the T-Lab dynamics and explain the goals of the game, I expect I might go wrong, and I would not be sad or mad about any decision makers that wants to do those things I mentioned just for the fun, because he can be just a player and want to have fun. But the goal of this is to have a more guided playthrough and understand, listen, even especially at the beginning, to have it tuned up and see if it actually works, so that this can work for other generations. The people, the decision makers that are helping us to make it, sorry, at the end, they will not need to play too much. They will test it enough, they will know the outcomes and scenarios and understand. But the idea is to have a tool that can help you translate all those complex subjects and that interact with each other in a lighter experience, but still learning.
Okay, that you definitely sold already this game for me. I'm looking forward actually to play it by myself, even I'm not from the T-Lab and not from the local authority over there, but looking forward to try it. But maybe you can give at least some spoilers how the final outcomes will look like. Can you give some ideas?
No.
Okay.
No.
We keep it.
But just to at the end, the winning or losing will be more the narrative, right? So it's not a visual and you see, oh, the city burned out and then Godzilla came and broke it out. No, it's not like that. It's more like the narrative. And then at the end of the period, we might make for 15 years or so, you get a message, okay, the population is happy, you're forever remembered because you did this and you chose that. And now the population is happy because of this. The environment's better because of this. And then in the next 50 years, even after the game, we have a more speech because you did this, now we got to this, ta ta ta. If you did really bad, it would be like, no, everybody's dead and the world's gone and stuff like that, a bit dramatic. This is a nice view of the outcome, but without giving too many spoilers.
Right. That is quite fascinating. And, well, we in GoDigiBios kind of piloting. We are just research and innovation projects, so we are allowed to pilot those gamified approach implementing government support system. But like, just improvising question to you, how do you think in what areas of policy, local or national policy, we can implement those games, or maybe governance or citizen engagement?
You mean for other projects also, not just...
Yeah, well, not even a project, but to have it as a very shared practice.
Yeah, does I mean like in other applications, even for biodiversity, but thinking not just about GoDigiBios. Well,
Exactly.
Then I go in the gamification course, just a bit of the theory. There are three main applications that we see gamification, and it's like either for communicating something internally, for example, Ihariari wants to make a training for new people, and every time somebody has to come here and do a training, 2-hour training with the person and get the answers and show a video, you can make a small gamified application for that. I don't know for your Ihariari activities, but the example I gave you for ArcelorMittal, or even better for MRN, it's a mining company. So there are all those safety trainings that they have to do every time, and there's this safety content. So they decided to make a simple game that simplifies those things, and then also on the road to the mine, there are things that are dangerous. So we made a game that happens because, in their opinion, it would be, and I agree with this. It's more imprinting in your brain if you die in an accident in the game than if you see a picture or just a video, or just, as I told you, as a co-creator. So you made a bad decision, and then there was an outcome of that. This is for internal communication. Can be many applications internally. The second is externally. So, and then it's the ArcelorMittal, I told you. They have visitors in the plant, and they can only have a small number of visitors, and it's a nice, they show everything about biodiversity, also how they preserve. Of course, they choose what they want to show, right? They will not show the bad things. They will show all the good things they are going back to society. And there is this bottleneck because you have to have somebody, you have to have authorization. It's a dangerous place. In all those situations where there's something is dangerous to do in real life, like you know what? Let's play with the forest, the rainforest, Amazon forest. Let's burn it down to see what happens. This is totally dangerous. But in a simulation, you can go as deep and as extreme as that. So anything that has an experience visiting inside the plant of ArcelorMittal, it can be dangerous. There's fire. They're making steel. They have auto forms like the high furnaces. Everything is dangerous there. And still, kids need to go there and understand how it happens and see what they're doing for society also back. A game works quite well for that. But also, not a game, but any gamification project. Also to get information from them, from the kids, from the stakeholders, from the population. Instead of sending just a form, you give them an experience, and during the experience, they will answer the things you want to learn. So this is the second main use. And the third is the one we know the most. You gave the example today, like it's for personal improvement. So Duolingo, for example. And you thought, oh, it's so addictive, and they make the mechanic. Yeah, it's made to make you want to play every day and to feel good every time you play every day. I have a 865 days streak on my Duolingo. That's how I learned French.
I do have only 50 so far.
But congrats.
Yeah, thanks. It still have some dopamine, kick and keep you addicted.
But I think that kind of answers the question a bit on how we could use. I would not give a specific example. Let's do to this area. But in those three main fields, like if it's communication internally for a company, if it's communication externally for a company, or if it's for individual growth, those are the main. If we have like gamification store, there will be those three categories,
Yeah, all right. Okay, Rafael, then is a final question. So when finally our listeners and our followers will be able to see and test our beautiful tool when it will be delivered to the G-Labs, and what's going to happen before, what the pathway to achieve this milestone?
Okay, I'm glad to see you didn't put yourself first. So you said for our listeners and our audience, you might be able to test it even before, but...
Well, I just try to be formal. Of course, I'm looking forward to try it out.
That's what you wanted to know. I know for sure this question was personal, but it's okay. Actually, the timeline for that, we expect to have by the middle of next year a playable version already with outside people testing. But then for inside people testing, I love that. For our insiders, I hope at least 4 months in advance, maybe March next year, we will be playing together a bit. I need really a lot of feedback from the consortium players, so of course I will count with your help. But then also interesting, if you're a listener and you like the subject, you want to participate, maybe you can try even a bit before. Just go to GoDigiBios, there's a form there, you can get in touch, say you want to be a how do I say, a guinea pig for the game, test lab rat. And I cannot promise, but we will try to put you in at some point in the testing process. Of course, first it will have to be internal, but as soon as we want to have feedback from somebody who has no idea of what's going on, we will try to contact those people.
Great. Thanks, Rafael, for sharing. And well, good luck on this quite long and complex path of also implementing all of the information comes from the system dynamic and other work packages and
No,
combine it into everything in one simplified
just
tool.
it's kind of ganging on me, right? It's like half of the consortium is creating data that I will have to
Exactly. You
analyze,
have
simplify, and put in the game.
quite a lot of responsibility.
Yeah,
So
but I'm loving it.
yeah. I mean, it's probably quite a fun process as well. So have fun and good luck with that. And for our listeners, today was our guest Rafael Lontra who visited us in our Brussels studio. And stay tuned because the new podcast of GoDigiBios will be coming soon. Have a nice one and see you.